Now, the chairman of NatWest has claimed it's not that difficult to get on the property ladder in the UK. Sir Howard Davies said that people will have to save more, but I don't think it's that difficult at the moment.
He also spoke of Dame Alison Rose in an interview with Radio 4's Today programme this morning. Take a look.
As chair of NatWest, about the departure of Dame Alison Rose, your chief executive, after she leaked some private information about Nigel Farage, you said on Tuesday the 25th of July, about 5:42 p.m, you and the board issued your backing for Miss Rose, and this was after she had made clear that she had leaked private information, not just about any customer, but about Nigel Farage, someone who's got quite a profile. Do you now accept that you and the board got that particular call on the 25th of July wrong?
What we said was that we backed her and that we ordered an independent review into the circumstances, because it was not at all clear what the circumstances had actually been.
Just to give you the exact quote, you said after careful reflection
to determine what was appropriate in our response.
Yeah, but what you said was after careful reflection, the board has concluded that it retains full confidence in Miss Rose.
Simply not allowing me to answer the question that you asked me. I think that what the judgment that we made at the time was entirely reasonable, to support her whilst we had an independent investigation of the circumstances.
Dame Alison Rose, of course, was the NatWest CEO who fell on her sword in the wake of Nigel Farage's banking scandal. Well, who better to hear from than the man himself? Nigel Farage joins us now. Good morning, Nigel. Despite all the resignations, the apologies, the fallout, the outrage, Sir Howard Davies still suggests that they behaved reasonably at the time when it came to your debanking for wrongthink. What's your reaction to that?
Well, it's very rare on GB News that we praise the BBC. But well done, Anil Rajan, for asking absolutely the right question. It was extraordinary. Everyone knew that it was Alison Rose that had broken all the basic rules of banking in revealing details about my account to Simon Jack, the business editor of the BBC. Everyone knew that. She'd admitted it. Had you been a teller working in a NatWest branch and you disclosed any information about any customer, you would have been out of the door. You would have been very lucky to get your month's money. And yet, Sir Howard, one of the great establishment failure figures of our time, decides not only should she not be sacked, but she should be able to keep her huge remunerative package. And it was because the government then intervened. Later on that evening, the government, and don't forget, we, GB News viewers on the country, we own 38% of this bank. The share price is on the floor. We've lost tens of billions as a country, backing Alison Rose, backing that bank, backing Sir Howard, and she only resigned later that evening under government pressure. And Sir Howard should have gone at that moment in time too. And his pathetic attempt to then cover it all up by finding some Remainer establishment mates with a law firm whose boss, by the way, had described Brexiteers as racists and xenophobes, to conduct an inquiry, and the inquiry finds that no one's done anything wrong, everything's tickety-boo. I mean, this is a disgrace at every level.
And this, well, they call it an independent legal review, Nigel, don't they? But didn't actually interview you.
Yeah, and Amal asked that question. You know, how can you do an interview with everybody involved in the affair, but not the person that was affected? And look, all you have to do is to look at the subject access request that I got, that 40-page document that I got back from Coutts. On 3 separate occasions, it says Nigel Farage is a viable commercial financial customer, and it makes it clear the reason for exiting me, the reason for debanking me, which, by the way, is now in the Oxford English Dictionary, and I'm rather proud of that. The reason is I did not align with the bank's values. It could not be clearer. And so you've had an attempted cover-up at every level. In the end, because of government pressure, she's going to walk away with about 3 million rather than 11 million. And Sir Howard, unbelievably, is still the chairman. Now, he's going on the 1st of March, but he has not been made to carry any responsibility whatsoever. This is not just a normal company, normal bank. This is something that we own 38% of. And in many ways, the government have been good through this debanking crisis. They promised new legislation, they promised much. But to allow this man to go out gracefully after his terrible behaviour, I just think it's wrong.
And actually, you would have thought with NatWest share price completely capitulating in recent years under his watch that he would have gone off his own back some years ago. But just proving how out of touch, arguably, this man is, this is his reaction to, his comments rather, that, quote, it is easy for young people to buy houses these days. Take a listen to this.
To get on the property ladder in this country?
Well, I don't think it's that difficult at the moment, but
to buy a house in this country? Are we living in the same country? Or are you reporting from overseas?
You have to save, and that's the way it always used to be.
Is he off his rocker, Nigel?
I mean, talk to anybody under the age of 40 living in London or anywhere near London, or actually Manchester or any of our big cities, and they are generation rent. The only way they can get onto the property ladder is if their parents give them, if they're fortunate enough, their inheritance early. It is all but impossible for young people to get on the property ladder, and what that's done, it's destroyed the culture of thrift. Howard says save, but I've spoken to young people who say there's no point saving because we're never going to save enough to even get the deposit that is now required. And this man is head of a bank with 19 million customers. 19 million customers. He couldn't be further away from the centre of gravity of public opinion. He couldn't be further away from his own customers if he tried. And I repeat, he's still there as chairman. It is incredible.
Nigel, need to get your view on a guest we had on earlier, somebody that you know, Conservative MP Philip Davis, and myself and Ben pushed him on reform. And he claimed reform at the election is and will be an irrelevance. What's your reaction to those comments?
Well, I've heard that before. I remember UKIP, when I was leading it in the early days, being described by David Cameron as swivel-eyed loonies of fruitcakes and mostly closet racists. Well, that did come back to rather bite Mr Cameron, because in the end, I managed to get him out as Prime Minister. So be very careful, Mr Davis, what you say. And I like Philip, but be careful. Because if you go and talk to your constituents and you ask them about reforms policies of fighting back against the woke agenda, helping small businesses, fulfilling the promises on immigration that were made in the Brexit campaign, you might find, Mr Davis, that actually a lot of your voters prefer reforms policies to yours. So this is somehow Conservative members of Parliament think they have a God-given, entitled right to their jobs, and that nobody else should ever stand for election against them apart from the Labour Party. And again, not quite on the level of Mr. Howard Davis, but Philip is out of touch.
Yeah, Richard Littlejohn made a good point in his Daily Mail column today, saying, why do the Tories have a God-given divine right to think that they should stand? Why isn't it them standing down for reform? Likewise, when the Brexit Party stood aside for Boris in 2019, and you arguably handed him the election. With reform built in the spirit of the Brexit Party, a lot of similar faces, both front of centre and behind the scenes. It's a bit, some would say, silly of Philip to suggest that this time round they're going to be irrelevant. But Nigel Farage, thank you so much.
I just wanted to know what Nigel was going to say then, because your face was...
I mean, look, it isn't just Philip Davis. You've got the editorials of the Mail, the Sun, the Telegraph. They're all saying reform shouldn't exist. We need to keep the Tories in power. The Tories are really awful. They're terrible, but Labour would be worse. Don't we deserve something better than this? Don't we deserve to have an actual open, proper debate where parties put out what they believe in and let the electorate decide? And I'll tell you this for nothing. There is no way that Richard Tice is backing down. There is no way he's going to do sweetheart deals with any Tory members of Parliament whatsoever. And reform isn't here for one election. It's here for the long term to try and replace the existing establishment parties. And that point he's making very strongly.
Great stuff. Nigel Farage, thank you for joining us this morning. Very much appreciated.